Hi, I'm Mike Coyle, and you're watching Insidexploration. Today I'm here with Mark Selby, who is the Chairman and CEO of Canada Nickel Company, listed on the TSX Venture under CNC. Mark, thanks so much for joining me today.
Great to see you again, Mike. How are you?
Excellent. You've been a very busy guy lately, and I couldn't wait to catch up with you. You had some great news releases, so let's start with the first one. You did your resource update. You were already 12th largest with 20%. You're up to what, 7 or 8 now with 50% of the structure drilled?
Yeah, so we're up to top 8, and I think sort of just under 50% of what we have at Crawford. Plus, again, we have all the other option properties, which we can go to, in a bit. The key thing, and again, you can see from our investor presentation, there's really two objectives with this resource update from the one that was published back in February. Was one was just was expanding the resource. So the main zone's larger, and then we've drilled off and have an initial resource on the east zone. You can see in the graphics that we included in the presentation and the release, there's some holes there that we can fill in. So it'll be easy for us to add some more tons. We decided to focus more meters on upgrading the higher grade core. I know I talk about it quite a bit, and may sound like a broken record, but in an open pit mining operation, if you have an ability to deliver 3, 5, 7 years of significantly higher than your average grade in the first years of a mine plan, that just has such an impact on the overall project economics. And so probably the most exciting number in the overall release is within the higher grade core, we had 201 million tons grading 0.34%. And the structure, again, if you look in the presentation, you can see the graphics there, that is basically now 1.8 kilometers long, where it kind of thinned out and wasn't sort of particularly well defined in a few places. It's now pretty consistently 150 to 200 meters wide, and it comes to surface across a pretty substantial, strike length of that 1.8 kilometers. So, when you've got 200 million tons, and if we're starting at 35 to 40,000 tons a day, that's almost, it's more than 15 years at that 0.34%, which is more than a third higher than the average for the deposit, 0.26. So that's if you look at the other sort of larger low grade sulfide deposits that are out there, that's a key differentiator for us, and I think why I'm so excited to be able to get this PEA done by the end of the year to demonstrate what that value benefit looks like.
So that was on one side of the highway.
Yes.
And I think you kind of caught everybody off guard and announced something on the west side of the Ultramafic complex. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no. I mean, great deposits always give you great news. So, in addition to in the process of publishing the resource update, we had figured out last spring that there's a certain geophysics combination. And we use that to guide our drilling as we extended out the higher grade core to the western part of the main zone. And it was very clear that did a very good job of zeroing in on the better mineralization with, better grades and more sulfur. There was this massive gravity anomaly on the other side of the highway. It's about 2.5 kilometers in length, anywhere from a few hundred meters to 800 meters wide.
Yeah.
Again, the one challenge in this area is just there are times it's a little boggy, so there's times of the year where it's a lot more challenging to drill, and so we were just waiting for the things to dry out, and there was a few big rainstorms this summer, so we finally got to drill on the western side of the highway. So we started from one side to drill in where it was dry, and then again, right where the geophysics got in a good position, we hit dunite. The other 3 holes that we then were able to move to a different position, all 3 of those holes, started and ended in dunite. And what was most exciting is we sort of moved back along parallel to our main zone structure, which about 850 meters along from where the higher grade core had sort of the drill definition of that had ended. The last 20 meters of that hole hit 0.31% nickel with 0.09 sulfur. Again, with these types of deposits, and we're not sure what the other assays are going to be, and I'm sure a bunch of it is going to be 0.25, but it looks like there's some sulfur, which is the key thing. But when you get a 0.3 and above, and with a decent amount of sulfur, so that a good chunk of the nickel is in sulfides, that's that again in these types of deposits, it's that type of mineralization that you're going to really generate some real free cash with. So that was a very, very exciting result. Again, we give a few glimpses of images, magnified. Again, this is not chunky, massive sulfide mineralization, but it showed up some very nice sulfide mineralization. We already had confirmed the mineralogy as being the same pentlandite, hazelwoodite, warite assemblage that we see in the main zone. So, again, just further confirmation that our geophysical understanding of the ore body seems to be on track, and we've got this massive target that's even bigger, than what we've just drilled off at the main zone. So, and again, we still have a number of other targets within Crawford, and then we've just finished completing. Flying the same geophysics package on the other 5 option properties. Again, that we know from one dimension of the geophysics has some large ultramafic structures, that back in the mid-60s, Inco put 1 or 2 holes in, but nothing more than that at that point in time. So, we're looking forward to, we should have those back at the end of the month, by the end of November, and we'll use those to generate targets for the coming winter.
So I want to get into some of those other 5 option targets, because we took a nice helicopter ride over there, and it all looks like it's fairly close together, and there's a lot of opportunity here. I'm excited about, not only as an investor, but because I'm covering the story. But this new area to the west of the highway, is this something that's going to be incorporated into your PEA? Like, will we get a resource out of that anytime soon, or you have a lot of drilling to do?
No, we still have a lot of drilling with the structure of that size. And again, that's going to be the exciting part of this PEA. I think we're going to have, pretty good numbers come out of this one. And again, that's just going to be on probably 35 or 40% of the structure. So, we'll be able to just, continue to demonstrate, that the potential for this to be a much larger multi-deposit district play is just going to increase the value even further from what we show initially, in that PEA. Again, the nice thing with this is it's not like, we've got one deposit and, there's a mountain range between the one deposit and the other deposit sitting on the other side. This is still all very similar terrain. It's been logged multiple times. It's all, relatively accessible off the highway that runs through the middle of the property. So, you can't ask for as good a location as we do for, the various targets we have.
So there's been some mineralogy done on some of the drilling that you did, or Spruce Ridge did early on. But a question that I keep being faced with as investors, well, how much is recoverable? And I know you're doing some metallurgical work, but do you have any insight based off of what your previous experience with Dumont? Does it tie in here at all?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a very good question. So because that is the key question, and I would encourage any investor who's looking at someone who's got looking at someone who has a large low-grade ultramafic deposit, that's a key issue. That's why we just after we put out our resource, we put out the first set of mineralogy results on the deposit. Is to really understand how much of the nickel ends up in a mineral, which is the pentlandite, the hazelwoodite, and warite in a mineral you can recover. So our what we saw at Dumont in my past life at RNC Minerals when we were advancing that project, that we typically got anywhere from kind of 60 to 70% of what was potentially recoverable. Again, people need to remember there's, just because it shows up as a mineral, it may not be of a certain grain size that you're going to actually be able to grab it in a float cell, particularly at the scale of the processing operations that we're going to be talking about having to build. So, Dumont was a 43% recovery life of mine, with the best, 3 or 4 years recovery kind of in the low 50%. My hope is here that we do have a little more sulfur floating around, and we also do have more magnetite, which we will be recovering as a byproduct. And the magnetite's helpful because the way these deposits form, the magnetite ends up being stuck to smaller sulfide particles. So as you're, trying to, pull the minerals you want out of as you're processing them, having that magnetite that you can separate magnetically and have it pull some sulfides with it, is helpful. So, I think we'll be able to do a few points better than Dumont on average. And then, particularly, in their higher grade, period, they're looking for grades that are sort of somewhere in the range of our higher grade core. And given we've got 200 million tons of that, I'm hoping that, we should be able, in the first 5 or 10 years to do, several points better than the 43% that Dumont had.
So, in having said that, and we're talking about Dumont a little bit, it's very
Yeah,
interesting. I mean, you've got two deposits, and I wrote about this not long ago. You've got Dumont, which is currently the second largest shovel-ready, fully permitted project, and then you've got Timmins, nearly 250 kilometers away.
yeah.
I mean, in your estimation, and I hate to ask forward-looking stuff like this, but when you think about what Elon's been talking about lately in the media, and building a gigafactory, do you not see this as a perfect fit? You've got two of the largest deposits, so you're well on your way to getting up that ladder quickly. I mean, don't you think it's kind of a perfect situation for him to build something in and around the Timmins area with the benefit of a Dumont side deal?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, between, again, I think if you look at, where Dumont is, where we are down, to Sudbury, you've almost got a nickel triangle there,
Yeah.
and the reality is, that there's just, you have the laterite resources that you have in Indonesia and the Philippines.
Mhm.
We've talked about the fact that they have a very, very large, carbon footprint, and you've seen just recently all three of the Indonesian HPAL operations, say they're no longer going to do deep sea tailings, and that has still been on the table, up until about 6 months ago. And I'm glad that we were actually able to get some of the environmental challenges, with nickel on the radar and see some of those changes that are better for the environment happen. But the reality is, again, everybody would love to have a high grade, nickel deposit that's, 1.5 or 2%,
Mhm.
and have a few million tons of nickel that's there. But the reality is, the last one of those we discovered was Voisey's Bay.
Yeah.
We still have Kabanga in Tanzania, but there is a reason it hasn't been, advanced for 30 years, even though it's probably a very high grade deposit. But the reality is, what's left in terms of sulfides is deep underground.
Mhm.
So in the Sudbury Basin, Onaping Deep is Glencore's new project, and that's going to produce 20,000 tons of nickel a year, and they're spending $1 billion, about 800 million US, to build that project.
Yeah.
20,000 tons. To put that in perspective, Elon Musk's battery day session that they did, and I encourage anyone who's investing in battery materials, if you have not seen it, watch it. They did a fantastic job of explaining sort of why and how the battery's made, and why
Yeah.
it's made in certain ways. Tesla's plan is to build 3 terawatts of battery capacity. Depending on how much you assume of that is going to be lithium iron phosphate, which doesn't have nickel, but there are other 2 main battery types, which are going to be nickel manganese, and then a almost 90% plus nickel battery. You would need, just Tesla alone will need 1 to 1.5 million tons of nickel per year. So Onaping Deep's, Glencore's new mine in Sudbury, and the only mine they built in a decade, that will be 1 week's of Tesla's nickel consumption. And oh, by the way, Tesla is not going to be 100%, of the electrical vehicle market.
No.
And to underscore, just how badly a lot of analyst forecasts are off, someone just sent me a 95-page analyst report from one of the leading Asian banks on sort of their update on EVs and the nickel market. And their forecast for nickel in EV consumption, was 1.2 million tons.
Mhm.
That's about just what Tesla needs.
Yeah.
So they are drastically underestimated, and they have a ridiculous forecast for stainless steel, which would imply the world would be in a global economic slowdown for most of the next 10 years. If stainless steel only grew at 2% a year. So there's a very long way to
No,
get
that's
around
okay.
to the only source of large, if you want 50 to 100 to 150,000 tons or more of nickel per year, the only types of deposits that can deliver it are these large scale, low grade nickel deposits. Because you can, deposits like ours, are in location where you can build a large scale mining operation. Great thing about an open pit mine, as opposed to an underground mine that you now have to build in places like Sudbury, is open pits are relatively easy to expand. You just build a bigger mill and buy more trucks and you dig a bigger hole. I mean, that's as complicated as it gets. And so, that's the only real alternative to, the volume of nickel, volumes of nickel coming out of Indonesia. And Tesla made it very clear they want to have a North America wide, sourcing solution, for the, for their plant in, for their 3 terawatts of battery production they want to build here. So, I think, Voisey's Bay is going to be about 40,000 tons a year going forward. You have Sudbury's about, Sudbury on the Valley side of the house is, I think, down to 40 or 50,000 tons of nickel a year. Thompson is down to 10 or 15,000 tons a year. You've got Raglan, Glencore up in Sudbury, about 40,000, and their entire production out of the Sudbury Basin will be about 30,000 tons. So, again, that's about 2 months. So the entire nickel production today that exists in Canada is about 2 months. Would cover about 2 months of Tesla's nickel use. And oh, by the way, all that nickel's already being sold, to a lot of other consumers and a lot of other industries. So again, sorry for the long answer, but I just want to really underscore to people, the market just is really underestimating how much more nickel, this industry is going to need going forward.
Well, on the heels of Battery Day, I mean, I think we've heard a little bit about Ford stepping up and looking for Ontario to be kind of a front runner in this sector, especially with all the nickel news coming out of Canada Nickel. And on that front as well, I mean, everybody's looking for greener solutions, and you seem to have a leg up in that front. So have you made any progress with the net zero nickel emissions since you've formulated that company?
Yeah, so the key piece there is I was actually down, I was working this week. You'll see an announcement here probably in the next 2 weeks, in terms of, a lab scale program, to actually start making some net zero nickel, cobalt, and iron. We're talking about it because we believe, we can make it happen. Again, we're in the fortunate situation where, 3 things come together. The tailings and waste rock absorb CO2. We have zero carbon hydroelectricity in the region, and we're in Timmins is an area that's quite comfortable with downstream processing. So you could actually build a downstream processing plant, and capture the off gas. So what we're looking to do is use our concentrate and use our tailings to absorb the CO2 that's generated, in our lab scale tests, from processing that material. And so we'll be working with some top-notch labs to be able to get that work done. Again, in our past life at Dumont, we successfully developed and commercialized a roasting path to be able to deliver concentrate into the stainless steel path without going through a smelter or refinery. The world's largest stainless steel company, Tsingshan, ended up building 2 roasters based on this technology in China. And so, we expect, again, our approach here is, using existing technology for the most part to be able to make this happen. And so we're quite confident that we're going to be able, to deliver, hopefully be carrying around, some net zero nickel, net zero ferronickel, and some net zero iron here sooner than later.
So do you think, or from what you've seen on your other option properties, I know there's some historic Inco drilling. I don't know if any mineralogy or metallurgy has been done with any of that, but is this something that you're kind of hoping is going to be the same scenario for, say, Kingsmill and Mahaffey and Aubin?
Yeah, no. I mean, we know, we can see from geophysics that, there's some ultramafic deposits. They've been you've got some intersects that say, the things that light up magnetically are ultramafic. We don't know whether they're dunite or peridotite at this point and how much nickel is there. But, our belief is that if there's nickel there and the nickel has been serpentinized, that we will see the same, hazelwoodite, aurorite, pentlandite assemblage that we see in the other deposit. And if that's the case, we pull those out, it'll be the same, approach. And again, ultramafics, the most valuable part of what we have, in 15 or 20 years, may not be the nickel itself, but the fact that we have these deposits that we've ground up into, exposing a massive amount of surface area, that'll soak up a huge amount of CO2. So, because carbon pricing is coming, it's going to be very real here in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so, being in a position where you own a bunch of these deposits, close to an industrial city like Timmins, is a very valuable proposition. And again, I encourage readers, or people watching this, you can see, if you just Google, carbon sequestration using ultramafic deposits, you'll see there's been a bunch of research, using deposits, not mining them, but actually injecting CO2 into them in situ. So, those mechanisms are very well understood. And so, again, the fact that we're mining it, grinding it up, is just helping in its ability to absorb the CO2 that the rock wants to do when it when it's exposed to the air.
Yeah, you're clearly in a favorable situation going forward for where the world is going. I mean, everybody's going green these days, and you've got something very unique by what it looks like. But of those 5 option properties, you said that you just did a range of geophysics. You're expecting them late November, December. What do you think is going to be the first one that you're going to want to kind of look at to do some exploration work? I know some areas are swampier than others. In fact, I was surprised you were drilling on the west side of the CUC, because I thought it was all swamp in there. So I was very pleased to see that. But what other targets are going to be immediately available to you, do you think?
Yeah, so the key, we're going to use the geophysics is going to be available at the end of November. So we'll use that to map out our targets from there. We will be drilling Kingsmill for sure. We published back in, I think, May or June that we had gone over the assay logs from there and noticed there definitely did seem to be some areas that had some promise in terms of having some elevated nickel grades with some sulfur present. We haven't done the mineralogy yet on those samples, but there looks like and again, these are very large targets. So even if the part that was drilled before didn't work out, or you only maybe clipped it, we can see areas where maybe there's a few kilometers by several hundred meters wide that really had no drill testing of them at all. And so, what we're keen on is to get the geophysics back and be able to correlate that geophysics to what we saw, in the drill core, those specific targets, and then use those to zero in. So yeah, Kingsmill will be, sort of top of the list. Again, we've got that fault that, the east end of the main zone, was quite good. We saw the west end of the east zone, which is the faulted off part of it, also delivered some pretty interesting intersections. And so, that fault runs right up through our Nesbitt targets north of Crawford. So, I'm hopeful, my fingers crossed there that's, going to be also another other set of interesting targets that are most likely to come out of there as well. So, no, I'm very, very keen to get these geophysics results back.
I love the smile. I feel the excitement, and I gotta say I share that excitement, because I look at the fact that you've got like 40 to 50% of the CUC drilled off, and you're already sitting at 7 or 8. You drill off the rest of the CUC, where are you going to be? 3, 4, 2? I don't know. We're not going to jump too far ahead and say what that might be. But then these other 5 options. I mean, Mark, you could very well be sitting on top of the #1 largest nickel sulfide amassed targets together. I mean, that's got to be friggin' exciting for you.
Yeah, no. I mean, we'll see. We have a ways to go, and Norilsk is obviously a huge amount of nickel that's there. But again, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility if you start dimensioning some of the the ultramafic structures that we think are there, and if some of them are nickel bearing, then yeah, no, you can start to add up some tons pretty quickly to get to a pretty large number. The other thing too is if you look in Western Australia, you do sometimes, these deposits can occur in clusters. So, if you look in Western Australia, you have, Yakabindi, Mount Keith, and Honeymoon Well, which are now owned all by BHP. They weren't always all owned by the same company. And again, those are three very sizable low-grade ultramafic deposits. Mount Keith's now mined out. BHP's developed, it has Yakabindi in production today, and they just bought Honeymoon Well from Norilsk. So, to think that maybe we have, a land package that would have, have a similar three deposits in there, is very encouraging. The Thompson Nickel Belt up in northern Manitoba, again, there's a number of larger low-grade ultramafics sitting within the Thompson Nickel Belt in the property the Valley owns today. So again, this cluster of ultramafic deposits has occurred before. So fingers crossed. We'll see what comes. It's going to be an exciting winter.
So companies like BHP seem to be ramping up in light of a increasing nickel price. You've often been on the record talking about the nickel super cycle potentially hitting sometime mid-2020s. Do you still feel very bullish on that? And what's the sentiment you're getting from these large producers? Have you been in talks with them lately? I know early on you were, but has there been any interest of late?
Yeah, no, I think, in terms of bullish, I think that Tesla battery day, I came away, again, I keep banging on the table that someone in these companies needs to spell the math out specifically so people understand, exactly how much nickel the industry, could need by 2030. But, again, the 3 terawatts allows you to do some math to come up to the 1 million to 1.5 million tons, and several analysts who are, did do that math and came to that conclusion. It just really underscores how, that's how good it could be. I think the other part of it is, BHP Billiton, have said multiple times now, and it's sort of a clear part of their strategy is, there's 3 future-facing metals that are going to be cornerstones of their future growth. It's copper, nickel, and potash. And, this was a company that spent most of the 2010s trying to sell their nickel business. They didn't find too many takers. And, again, having worked trying to advance Dumont during that period, I can completely know how hard it was to get any investor interest in nickel, in the prior decade. Today it's 180 degrees different. Investors like nickel, mining companies like nickel, again, there's a number of groups that are keeping tabs on us as we're moving along here. And so, again, another, reason to de-risk this and get more, to help sort of frame it more clearly is, getting a PEA done at the end of this year and a feasibility study done by the end of 2021, just increases the potential, pool of investors and potential pool of buyers, the more you're able to, de-risk this project. And, again, too, we're, making good progress on the metallurgy work, and we'll have, we should have news out on that, by the end of November as well. So, again, which with these type of deposits is a big de-risking event. So yeah, no, I'm excited by the interest we're getting. I'm excited by what the medium and long term looks here, and I again, I think we've got a pretty clear path to hit some milestones that are going to make it even more exciting for investors to come into the story.
So I think you've answered this question in multiples, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. I've had a lot of investors say, "Oh, darn, I've already missed out on the run." And I constantly say, no, I don't believe you have. I think there's a lot more to this story that's coming. What would you say to the investor that says, I think at this point, I've missed out on the best part of Canada Nickel? I mean, you IPO'd at what, 25 cents, and you're sitting around $2 right now. But I think there's more room to grow. What's your take?
Oh yeah, no. I think, again, look at the share price path of Voisey's Bay. There was one leg, and then it kind of, did this for a bit. And then when people realized, okay, really, what the scale of it they had was, it did another massive leg higher. I think, in our investor presentation, we highlight, the fact that you get 1 or 2 good nickel sulfide discoveries per decade. There's again, there's not, in copper, there's, 15 to 25 good larger scale copper projects out there at various stages of development. In nickel, it's kind of, one hand's worth at best. And so, the example I always point to is Nova Bollinger. That was a 2012 discovery. There's only two good new sulfides discovered during the 2010s. It was Nova Bollinger by Sirius, and then Sakatti by Anglo American.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a 2012 discovery. They were acquired by Independence Group for 1.8 billion Australian in 2015. It was not during the nickel boom. It was not during the development cycle. It was by a company that wanted to continue to have some exposure, to the nickel market. And the reality is there wasn't, that was the best discovery, of the past 10 years. And that was the price tag, that they had to pay to acquire it. So, that's about 10x from where our current market cap is today. And, we already have a multiple of the resource. And, if you take a recovery, kind of the Dumont recovery factor and apply that, we still have a multiple of what they've got at Nova Bollinger. A more recent benchmark to point to is Oz Minerals just picked up the 30% of the Nebo Babel project that was owned by Cassini Resources. It was an acquisition of the company, and they spun out the other assets, and Oz Minerals took their remaining stake in Nebo Babel. That valued that project at $250 million Australian, or about another 30 or 40% higher from where we are today. Again, it's at a pre-feasibility study stage. But that's a deposit that was discovered in 2000. It's been extremely well drilled off, so there's really not a whole lot of exploration upside left. And again, it's smaller than what we've got so far at Crawford. So, I know everyone likes to get in and have been able to write it from day one. But there's some times where there's still a lot of room to go. And I still think there's a lot of room to go. I've bought stock with a 2 handle on it here. Multiple times here in the past 3 or 4 months. So, I'm expecting a significant return on that capital.
Well, you've certainly supported the stock. There's no question about that. We've seen you buying at even higher prices than what there are today. So I think that goes a long way with investors, and always appreciate your insight, Mark. I think we'll cut it short here. It's already ran a little longer than I'm sure you planned on spending with me, but I really thank you for your time today.
Oh, no, thanks, Mike. That was great. Take care.
Excellent. You too.